American businessman Mark Carney, the leader of the Liberal Party, has introduced a housing plan that involves more regulation, more government control, more government oversight, and more Canadian taxpayers' dollars, proving once and for all that the Liberal Party will take their ideas from anyone, including 1930s Germany and the USSR. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. Chinese banking investor Mark Carney has decided that the best way for Canadians to get free of the housing crisis and to get a better economy and to be able to combat the behemoth that is the United States of America, that we should introduce more regulation and more control, that we shouldn't allow for a free market at all. Of course, a free market is something that will trouble a Marxist, because that doesn't allow for them to have every control of every aspect.
And we're going to unleash the power of public-private cooperation at a scale not seen in generations. The first part of our plan is to create an entirely new entity, Build Canada Homes, a lean, mission-driven organization that will do several things. First, it will act as a developer on new affordable housing projects. It will catalyze a new housing industry. It will provide financing for affordable home builders.
Well, wasn't that a wonderful collection of buzzwords? I mean, liberals already talk a big talk about how they don't like the slogans that the conservatives use, but the Liberal Party and their buzzwords, I mean, it's a lean form of government. I ask you to point to one government that the Liberal Party has put together, one bureau, and tell me how lean it is. Then they're going to do the same industry. They're going to build private industry and government together. Well, the most successful example of that was 1930s Germany. People often wonder why that happened. Well, they sat idly by and allowed it to happen. Then he says the government is going to be the developer. So that means that they will only build the buildings that they decide. And Mark Carney not only is a fanatic for net zero, but he believes that high density is the solution. He believes that in a country that's crammed along the border with the United States, that has such a horrible internalized economy, that what we should be doing is cramming more people into Toronto, shoving more people into Montreal, shoving more people into Calgary. That's his solution to the problem. And he believes that he should do it with the taxpayers' money, that these industries and these businesses that he's going to use to build the houses will use taxpayers' dollars to build them.
We're getting government back in the business of building affordable homes. Acting as a developer, Build Canada Homes will work with industry to build affordable homes at scale, including on public lands. We'll make good on the promise to unlock federal lands for home building on a post-war scale. Build Canada Homes will also provide $10 billion of low-cost financing to builders to construct deeply affordable homes for those most in need, as well as housing for students and seniors. And Build Canada Homes will catalyze the creation of an entirely modern housing industry in this country. We need to take our construction sector to the next level. There are 80,000 vacancies and another 300,000 workers set to retire over the course of the next decade. Labor productivity in this sector has been stagnant for years. And at the same time, construction costs are up 51% in recent years.
Well, it seems that Mark Carney has said the quiet part out loud, that not only has the Liberal government not put enough money into getting people trained to build houses, but the cost of those houses, due to the net zero carbon tax hysteria that the Liberal Party just wants to utilize so badly, only in Canada. Now, Mark Carney cut down 9,000 hectares in Brazil without any problem at all. That didn't bother him in any way, shape, or form. But in Canada, somehow, he wants us to live by a different set of rules, a different standard. You have to ask yourself, who's he really working for at this point? I mean, there's no way that you can tell yourself that what he's suggesting is what's good for Canadians. He admits that the cost of housing has gone up 51%. Well, how do you expect to get houses built if you want to increase the cost of the houses? You want the Canadian taxpayer to pay it. How can they when they have such a tiny little GDP? The words, the buzzwords that he's using, but he offers no solutions. He's just talking. But there's nothing in there that says, hey, I'm going to do it this way, XYZ. His solution is to build high density in downtown Toronto and have you pay for it.
The way we build homes needs to change. Prefabricated and modular housing will play a big role in the future. They can drive down the time to completion by up to 50%. They're cheaper to build by up to 20%. And they're a more sustainable way to build, producing 22% fewer emissions than traditional construction methods. And the good news is we're already home to many new prefabricated housing factories. We want Canada to be the world leader in this new innovative industry. We should be that leader. That's why we're providing $25 billion in financing to scale up that industry.
Absolutely nothing in what he just said is true. First, let's point to the elephant in the room. He wants to lend his close personal friends 25 billion taxpayers' dollars. He wants to borrow $25 billion and give it to his close personal friends and then give them the exclusive contracts to build all of the houses for that new government industry, Build Canada Homes or whatever he called it. He wants essentially to take control of the housing market so that he can be your landlord, just like he has done in the United States. Here we can see that Brookfield buys U.S. single-family home portfolio for $1 billion US dollars. That was released by the Globe and Mail. $1 billion US dollars in private homes in the United States this guy has purchased. And then they went ahead and purchased another $950 million of a housing company. So they took other people's money and bought up homes, nearly $2 billion worth just in the United States alone. While he tells you that you have to go high density. While he tells you that he wants to tie the government and all of his close personal friends together to build these houses so that you will forever be paying rent. All of your family members will be paying rent. I mean, I'll get to the dystopian nightmare of this, but I'm sure many of you that have come from these high densities can understand what I'm talking about. How the one guy sends his bill collector around to collect the rent from every person that you know in your entire neighborhood because the one guy controls it all. And you told yourself you were escaping that. You told yourself that you were going to bring your whole family out of that, only to run into the Liberal Party in Canada, and now headed by Mark Carney, who wants to mimic that. That's what you're voting for if you vote for the Liberal Party. You're voting for the kind of high density that you see in so many countries around the world.
Who will be busy building these homes for decades.
Millions of homes he's talking about, decades, right? He's not talking about building the roads, though, is he? Because he wants it to be all about the high density. He wants you to understand nothing and try to convince you that he's doing the right thing by you. The reality is that I know how to build a home. I know how to city plan. I know a lot of those things, Mr. Carney. And I'll tell you straight to your face that there's nothing that you're saying that makes any sense. If you were trying to solve the problem like you claim, it doesn't make any sense. Because you wouldn't try to say, let me make more government. Let me pick only a very couple of builders around the whole entire country. And that's going to somehow solve the problem. Then turn to the people behind you and say, oh, you're going to be at this for decades. Of course, you're going to be at it for decades. And as a result, that means we need to have more people doing it, not less. We need to have it wide open, not strictly controlled by the central government.
For the next 5 years, my government will cut development charges, taxes on home building in half for all multi-unit housing. That's $40,000 off the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment just south of here in Toronto.
Two very large things were said in that sentence. First, he said he's going to wipe these development charges away for people that are building multi-unit housing. Now, another way to say multi-unit housing is apartment building. That's another way to say it. So we can see right there, he admits that he's only going to be assisting people that are building high density. Right? He doesn't want to get people spread out. He doesn't want to develop the structure of the country. He doesn't want to send things up north. He doesn't want to do any of that. He just simply wants to build high density housing and keep everybody locked into the cities while he carves out private game reserves in Algonquin Park. I mean, that's what comes next, right? Travel restrictions. But leave that aside. Let's look at what he said there. He's going to waive the development charges, but they're not his charges to waive. He can't cut them in half. All he can do is borrow money, take the tax dollars, the revenue that he's borrowed that money, and give it to the cities and the municipality. He's not waiving them. He's paying half. If you're going to build a building in Toronto, if you're going to build a building in Vancouver, if you're going to build a high density building, he will have you help pay half of the charges to the city, to the municipality. Nowhere in there is he talking about giving you your own personal home, your own backyard, any of those things that you were dreaming of. Forget it. Nowhere in there does he acknowledge that the fact that the Toronto market is filled with condos that nobody wants to buy. They want $1.3 million for them, and they're talking about $40,000. You have got to be kidding me, thinking in your mind that a $40,000 payment from the federal government to the provincial or the municipal government on behalf of somebody who's going to have to rent a 2-bedroom apartment for the remainder of their natural life is somehow a deal. I mean, that's what'll happen, right? It'll only be the same 6 companies that own every apartment building, and every person in there will pay their rent to the exact same people. And when you don't do what you're told, or when there's things that need to be repaired, there will be nobody to complain to. Many of you that are, in Canada can remember that, or your parents can remind you of it. And that's the nightmare that he is introducing. He says it himself. They're his words. They're not mine. I'm simply translating what he said. They're his words.
The new Housing Accelerator Fund is an example. It's gaining traction. And countless mayors who signed on from Guelph to Red Deer, Quebec City, have said it's building more homes in their communities.
So we're back to the Housing Accelerator Fund that's already cost Canadians $8 billion and really hasn't built a single house. This is him giving incentives to these cities to build high density, right? But then he says, no. They've all said that there's countless mayors that have said that it's helping build their houses. However, I'm standing up here telling you that we have a housing crisis. I'm telling you that it's gaining traction, right? Using the word gaining traction, indicating that it has done nothing up to now. And then he'll say that there's a lot of places that will admit that they're building them houses at the same time as saying that there's no houses in Canada. Somebody make sense of that for me, because there's nothing in there that adds up. Nothing. What does add up is Mark Carney's book, where he wants to do nothing but high density. I've heard him say it a dozen times. I'm not going to bother putting a clip in it in this video because I'm sure we'll have to come back to it. And what also adds up is that many of you that are listening to my voice, many of the newcomers to Canada, many of the people that come from the old country, or many of the people whose grandparents come from the old country, you know what a high density looks like. You know, it's fine on a vacation, but not necessarily something that you want to live with, that you want to raise your children with, that you want to have when you're nearing retirement and you got 4 generations crammed into a 1-bedroom apartment and you have to schedule what time you get to use the bathroom. That you have to take turns eating in the kitchen because there's just simply not enough room for all of you. You all know it. Many of you know what high density looks like, and it's not the dream that you have. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you should leave me a comment saying that, no, this is the dream that I have. I want to be crammed in with my neighbor. I want to be able to hear them use the bathroom every day. I want to be able to have to turn my TV up because somebody else's dishwasher is going. Of course, dishwashers won't necessarily be built in because Mark Carney thinks dishwashers are bad for the environment, not to mention laundry machines. So in these high densities, I wonder what kind of laundry system that's going to be set up. It won't matter because it will take so long to get it built because of all the bureaucracy that Mark Carney has to put in the way first. And where is he going to find this $35 billion? Because it's the $10 billion that he's giving to it's more than that. It's $10 billion that he's going to give to the new government. It's $25 billion that he's going to give to his building friends. And it's another $8 billion, I guess, he's going to give to the Housing Accelerator Fund to buy off the cities. So, I mean, we're talking ridiculous amounts of money. I guess you shouldn't be surprised from a government that has already gone $26 billion into debt just in the few months that they've had the mantle. But I suppose that's a different video. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.